but it goes up the more keto you do. And so I'm hoping everyone will take a look at that. I'll actually put it in the chat so people can see it. The keto diet is dangerous, and anyone who's pushing it is talking about short-term gain, long-term pain.
I second that. Totally said it perfectly. Yeah, totally agree.
Okay, thank you. There is, I don't know, I can't speak for the whole country, but where I live and from what I'm reading, these new drugs, these weight loss drugs, diabetes drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy are very popular and gaining popularity. Is this something that you all recommend to fight heart disease, to lose weight? And is this something you recommend people do, or do you believe that they shouldn't?
I can talk about it because we're getting it all the time. We even have people coming out and saying, well, lifestyle changes. All we need is our GLP-1 inhibitors. They are great drugs. They are able to slow down cardiovascular death. They are good for heart failure. They're good for ischemic heart disease. No question about it. They can cause weight loss and improve your diabetes. Now, the issue is, are they really turning off the faucet? Or are they just better mops to mop up the floor? Well, I would say that if anything, I got a problem. And that is that they're increasing healthcare disparities. There was a wonderful article, not wonderful, from Washington Post, October 3rd, that anyone can look at, talking about the decreasing life expectancy in the United States and codifying how it's not just racial discrimination stuff. You see much larger differences in death based on income. And my poor patients cannot get those drugs, and the wealthy ones can. So we're just doing yet another thing that increases our healthcare disparities in this country, which have been running rampant, and it's just too much. So obviously, I would like to see, and we're never likely to see, whole food plant-based diet with its more recently published 37% reversal of diabetes within 6 months. That was published about 8 months ago. Okay. Why wouldn't we do that? Or at least do a randomized trial between whole food plant-based diet and a GLP-1 inhibitor. And until we have that data, we're going to be talking about more healthcare disparities.
Thank you. I think that the three of you are very impressive. Your books are impressive. Your studies are impressive. You've been speaking for years. So you won me over. I'm a tremendous fan of all of you. I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys. What is the rest of the world saying? What's the medical community, your peers, government agencies, scientists saying? In other words, when you present this and you show this to them, how come they're not changing the food everywhere? Why isn't everyone fully embracing this and making this the policy in the country, in the states, in the schools? What's preventing this information from moving faster and quicker to everyone?
I'd like to make a comment on that. I spent quite a bit of time in the earlier part of my career in policy at the national level. Actually involved in congressional affairs and so forth. And one thing I saw, and it sounds very sad and very negative, but I really feel this very strongly, that on the one hand, the Department of Agriculture, which represents the livestock industry, for example, they're very cautious. They're going to basically keep on pushing their kind of food and diet, if you will. And we get sick and we need some help. And then in contrast, the NIH, the largely controlled by the drug industry, to be honest about it, Lyndon Johnson first called attention to that, really in very strong words, in 1969. That we on the one hand, we got part of the government sort of allowing us to get sick, maybe even encouraging us, quite frankly. And the other part, basically, it's all okay because we got solutions to resolve the problem. I mean, I know I'm being very cynical here, but that's what I've seen because I've worked at the fairly senior levels in the government and seen the kind of policies that are made. And there's a very distinct difference between, a very distinct effort to made on both accounts that, we've got the drugs here to take care of us. That'll do okay. And that's just the general narrative. Don't worry about it. Eat the wrong food, if you will. I mean, that's getting across. And a lot of that is really promoted by the fact that in the media are controlled. Something like between 70 and 75% of the advertising in the media is coming from pharmaceutical companies. That makes it tough. That really makes it tough. It's not necessarily so obvious to everyone watching, but that is a very powerful incentive to sort of guide us in a sense as to the kind of diet we might be able to live with and get to see, okay, we'll take care of that kind of thing. And so I'm a bit cynical about what's happening until we get some control of the message itself. We've got to be able to figure out a way to tell the message that the public get to know. And I like the message being very broad, involving all kinds of degenerative diseases, quite frankly, because the solution is about the same.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on this business about how we can convert everybody and how we can change and so forth. And to that point, I have recently been emphasizing more and more the following factors, namely that every single patient who ever had heart disease in this country or throughout, every single one of those patients who have heart disease, at one time, they did not have heart disease. No. Now, how powerful is that? What does that tell us? We're intervening now when the disease is so progressive, these patients are at, at death's door, or they're very sick, or they've got significant amount of disease. That's not the time we should be trying to stop this disease. The time to try to stop it is when they're in school, before they ever develop this disease. And the other thing, of course, obviously, is it's almost criminal. When the USDA every 5 years puts out for the public and actually a very clearly defined plan of nutrition.
What if I told you?
What has it got behind it? Who runs the USDA? Cattlemen's Association, Dairy Association, Mars Bars companies. I mean, this is a real rascal. The conflict there is so enormous. So how are you going to have a family follow a sensible guidelines if they pick it up from the USDA every 5 years? And I congratulate my friend Neil Barnard, who really does the best job he can to fight that.
Thank you.
So I would add to that. I've gone to try and influence regulators. It's very difficult, particularly around the dietary guidelines for Americans that have come out every 5 years. The really hard part is that they're supposed to be independent bodies, but our issue is our Congress. Our Congress does earmarks, and they do things that are going to help honestly get them reelected. They're paying attention to their constituents, and I certainly have lobbied most recently to try to get cardiac rehab ordered by nurse practitioners and PAs. It was something that was just, it seems logical, but there were blocks at the regulatory level, and Congress can help. And so they can help us or they can hurt us. And one of the things that came out in the September 22 White House Nutrition, Hunger, and Health, I believe was the name of the conference, was that we are still doing congressional subsidies for animal products and taking vegetable products, plant-based products, and making bad things out of them, refined grains, high fructose corn syrup. That money should be reinvested like Finland did into helping farmers develop and lowering the price, therefore, of whole food plant-based items that would lower our healthcare budget. But we have a lot of obstruction from industry, and we're basically going to have to get through Congress. I put in the chat one other major issue, and that is television marketing. We had the foresight in 1973 to stop cigarette advertising for smoking, and yet we still show fast food, even though that, I'm not going to say which brand, but it's probably all of them. It's got a meat or two different species of animals, plus some dairy, plus plus some refined grain, plus a fried vegetable, French fries, and a sugar sweetened beverage. When every single one of those things has data showing peer-reviewed published data saying that it increases mortality. So the name of our article was Marketing Cardiovascular Mortality, because that's what we're doing. And unfortunately, the White House conference, even though I'd made that suggestion to them, they didn't approach it. It's too much of a hot button issue because corporate America doesn't want to hear us putting limits on what they can sell and what they can market. Now, the last point I made, of course, is about healthcare disparities. University of Chicago published a study that you can find on Google or any search engine that showed that more than 5 hours of watching of television per day goes linearly down as income goes up. So our poorer, less educated, blue-collar workers watching a massive amount of television. And the wealthier you are, the less you watch. And so who is getting that marketing?
Thank you very much. Could you each make a final 30-second closing statement? Dr. Williams, you want to start?
Sure. So there are a couple of things we didn't talk about that I thought somebody was going to ask about. So I'll take this opportunity to talk about them. The two major things that I see happening in the plant-based nutrition world, number one, this is in the last few months, okay, or last few weeks, I should say. Number one is, please, I hope everyone looks up the MNPs and NNPs, that's microplastics and nanoplastics. We are polluting our oceans. It's being eaten by sea living beings in the sea, and then we are eating those fish. And what the New England Journal of Medicine on March 7th showed is that the people who have microplastics in their plaque have a 453% increase in future cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, and death. We can't ignore this anymore. And any cardiologist who's telling people to do a Mediterranean diet, despite that not helping with the heart, needs to look at that data. The fish from 30 years ago is not the fish of today. That's number one. Number two is a little bit more uncomfortable to talk about, and I haven't figured out how to say it except in a circle of close friends. But I encourage everyone to put in your search engine the effect on human behavior of cortisol, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine that occur when an animal is slaughtered. Okay? Very serious, very uncomfortable information to find out that that thing that we always say, I don't know if you guys have heard this, oh, when I became vegan, my road rage went away. Okay? That effect on human behavior is quite profound. They've shown it in prisons, that you make them vegan and the gangs and the shivs and the fights stop. The recidivism isn't 65% anymore. It's more like 2%. Okay. And domestic violence goes down when people do plant-based nutrition. It is those four hormones affecting human behavior because of the way the animals are mistreated and then sent to market. So I would say that anyone in listening to this needs to look at both of those issues because they would really be game changers if we could get people to realize that, and one of the websites is talking about meat with a side of cortisol. Okay, you can Google that one if you want. But I think people going from red meat to seafood, not realizing that they're eating plastics, we really need people to recognize that. New England Journal of Medicine. I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Esselstyn. Would you like to make a quick closing statement?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Steve, on putting together this mammoth symposium and offering it to thousands of people free. I think you do an amazing service with that. Kim, it's always nice to see you again, and smarten me up. Colin, it's always a treasure. We've been friends now for over 36 years. My final comment would simply be that I think that I am still, although I'm 90 years old, I'm terribly optimistic about the seismic revolution that can come in health. And that seismic revolution is never going to happen from the invention of another pill, a drug, a stent, or a bypass. But that revolution will come about when we in the profession have the will and the grit and the determination to share with the public what is the lifestyle, and most specifically, what is the nutritional literacy that will guide them to be able to annihilate these common chronic killing diseases.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of jealous of the idea that nutrition as a science is really very important, and we know so little about it. And I have a definition of nutrition that I've really become accustomed to now and advocate. Namely, nutrition is not about individual nutrients and what they do, and focuses on that, how much there is in food and how much that kind of thing. We call that reductionism. We tend to know that. And we've lived in a society with respect to health where reductionism kind of taken over. We talk about very definite causes operating by very definite mechanisms to create very definite responses. The thing that I think we've overlooked historically, and the history of this is really fascinating. Basically, we tend to do what I just said, focus on one detail at a time because it creates revenue. It's that simple. Whereas nutrition, in contrast, the way Mother Nature fixed us up for that was all these nutrients actually working together, provided we're eating the right food. And I might add one more comment. As animal food goes up, we've got problems coming from all sorts of things. As animal food goes up, plant food goes down. So the two work together. We shouldn't think just about one thing at a time. That combination, animal food, plant food, and all the nutrients in those various foods are working together. They have multiple mechanisms they work with. So we got to be careful about getting too focused on the details rather than really concern ourselves with a much broader sort of view of what this is all about. Keep it simple.
Thank you very much. On behalf of all the people that don't have a microphone, we really want to thank all of you for your life's work, your dedication, your books, your time that you've devoted and volunteered and given away so much of your time and effort to help us. We all appreciate it. I'd like to unmute everyone so everyone else can thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Esselstyn.
Thank you.